Is the brand new PodMic USB the perfect all-in-one solution for podcasters, gamers, and streamers? Let's take an initial look at the features and sound quality and compare it to the original PodMic. All right, so as I mentioned there, this is going to be an initial look at the sound quality and features of the PodMic USB. I just received my PodMic USB yesterday, and Rode did not send me this microphone to do a review or anything. I purchased it with my own money. I have been running several tests on the PodMic USB since it arrived yesterday, and so I thought it would be a good idea to share my initial take on the sound quality and the features, and then I will be releasing some future videos going more in depth on the features, and also I'll be doing some comparisons to other microphones like the NT USB Plus. So be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see those. Now, you have been hearing the PodMic USB connected over the USB connection to my MacBook Pro since the beginning of this video. I don't have any of the DSP features turned on. I'm just recording the raw audio into Logic Pro so that I can sync it in post. And I do have the windscreen that Rode is providing with the PodMic installed because I do find that it helps quite a bit with plosives. Just for example there, so you can hear the sound difference between the windscreen on and the windscreen off. Please pick my podcast. Please pick my podcast. From what I can hear while monitoring, I think there's a little bit of a sound difference between windscreen on and windscreen off. That is usually the case. It definitely helps with those plosives. Now, this pop filter does fit on the original PodMic as well, being the exact same, body shape and build style. You're now hearing the original PodMic recorded over, of course, the XLR connection. However, right now, at least, you cannot buy this pop filter separately. I don't know if Rode is planning on selling it separately at some point in the future. Now back over to the PodMic USB. I am going to connect this via XLR in just a second so we can do a back-to-back XLR to XLR comparison here. We'll also take a look at Rode Connect software and the DSP features in just a minute. But first, let's do that XLR to XLR sound comparison to the original PodMic. All right, so this is the comparison that I'm sure you've all been waiting for. This is the PodMic USB and the original PodMic connected both over XLR running into my MixPre 6 recorder. I have them both set at 55 dB of gain. I will not apply any post-processing to this at all. I'm just going to normalize the level. I'm just going to go back and forth between the PodMic and the PodMic USB so that you can hear if there is any tonal quality difference in these two microphones. Now, Rode says a couple things that almost sound a tiny bit contradictory to me on their website about the PodMic USB. They've said that the PodMic USB was made to sound exactly the same as the PodMic original. However, some of the more recent updates on their site include a description of the PodMic USB that now indicate it has a more flat and natural frequency response and that its circuitry was enhanced. Now, that specific statement does not indicate whether they are talking about the USB circuitry specifically. I don't know what to expect from this test, honestly. It's just a blend of both in my headphones right now, so I don't know until I listen to this afterward. So do you hear any difference at all between the USB and the original? Let me know down in the comments if you can detect any differences between the two. One other quick thing I want to mention before we move on is that the PodMic USB unfortunately cannot be used to record both the USB connection and the XLR connection simultaneously. I was hopeful that you could do both because there are some use cases where you may want to do both, but in a response to a customer question, I saw that Rode indicated, no, you cannot use both of the outputs at the same time. All right, we're back to the USB connection now. A couple quick hardware things to point out, and then let's jump over and look at the DSP features in the Rode Connect and Rode Central software. On the back of the Rode PodMic is, of course, where you've got all of your connections. You've got your USB-C connection in addition to your XLR connection. That is also where you have your 3.5 millimeter headphone for latency-free monitoring. You've also got a dial, which doubles as a button. So the dial is actually the mute button as well as the volume for your monitoring. Now, there is an LED indicator light on the back also to let you know whether you are muted or live. However, a little bit of an interesting choice to put it on the back and not try to relocate it to some other place because it's really not visible while you're recording to have it on the back. Now, one thing that's notably missing from the PodMic USB that is present on some other microphones from Rode, like the NT USB Plus, is a monitor mix knob. So when connected over USB and you're using the headphone monitoring on the PodMic USB, you cannot control, with a hardware dial anyway, you cannot control the monitor mix of how much of your monitoring versus how much of your system you're hearing. So you'll have to control that using software. All right, let's take a look at the DSP features in Rode Connect, and I'll point out the one clunky experience I've had so far with the PodMic USB. All right, let's start with Rode Central. This one's pretty simple, and all we have to do is select the PodMic USB once it is connected and recognized, and we can click on Audio Setup to get access to all of the DSP processing as well as the gain. We can turn the gain up or down here. We can also turn on the processing, so if I turn that on, it takes just a second here. I'm on a MacBook Pro, and it seems to be just a touch laggy. Don't know if it's any different on Windows, but now the processing is engaged. However, the individual items still need to be turned on here if you're doing it for the first time. So if we come in here, you've got the same view that looks just like the Rodecaster Pro 2. You can turn on the exciter, and then once you turn that on, you've got control over separately. You've got control over big bottom and aural exciter there. We've got compressor. We'll turn the compressor on. There we go. Our compressor is on now. We've got our noise gate. We've got our high pass filter. I'll turn that on. Interestingly, there's only one choice, and it's 60 hertz. On some of Rode's other microphones, you have a choice between a 75 hertz and a 150 hertz. And there we go. So that's everything except for the noise gate. All right, so there we go. The noise gate is now engaged, and you do have the granular ability to adjust the threshold, the attack, the release, all of that. I'm going to turn the threshold down a bit. We'll see what that sounds like. This is the one thing that's been a little bit buggy for me. So there we go. I'm going to turn everything back off now. We'll just go turn the processing off. By the way, that was the advanced mode. There is also the simple mode where you have control over just the sparkle and the body, like those few basic controls. Now let's hop over to Rode Connect. All right, so here is our Rode Connect app, and if you don't see the Rode PodMic USB here as an input channel when you first connect it, you can simply hit this plus sign here, and you should see the PodMic USB pop up as one of the options to add. You can also go to the top right corner here and hit this menu and go to the channel assignment, where you should be able to drag and drop the PodMic USB to any of your input channels. And then if we just click right on the image of the PodMic USB on the input channel here, we should be able to get a pop-up and see all of the DSP processing here for Rode Connect. This is going to look a little different than Rode Central. You've got your high-pass filter over here on the left. Let's turn that one on. So now we've got our 60 hertz high-pass filter engaged. We've got our gain control on the left, and then on the right, this is where we've got our DSP processing, which is currently off. If we turn this on, this is now our depth, sparkle, and punch. So this is what the simplified DSP processing looks like. If I dial some of these back a little bit, that should dial back a little bit of that processing that you hear. Or we can also click on the advanced mode to turn that on. Now we're back into our advanced mode. So I'll go ahead and turn on the noise gate here. We'll get that going. And of course, we've got the granular control here, so I can turn this threshold down a little bit. Maybe I turn the attack up a little bit so that it kind of slows down a little bit, maybe is a little less aggressive with the noise gate. We can go to our compressor and dial that back or up. We'll leave a pretty good amount of compression there just so you can hear the difference. And then we'll also go to our exciter. We've got our exciter controls here for both big bottom and aural exciter, just like in Rode Central. And we're back to the noise gate. This noise gate is the one thing that I've had a little bit of a clunky experience so far with the PodMic USB. Sometimes when the noise gate is on, even though I have adjusted these settings to be a little bit less aggressive, it still gives me a little bit of that somewhat aggressive sound to the noise gate that I don't personally love. So I've been leaving the noise gate off, and I found that the compressor, once I've dialed it in, and then also the exciter and the high pass filter, I found all of those to sound pretty nice and natural. So that's all of your DSP processing settings in Rode Connect. There's one other thing I want to point out that hopefully changes at some point down the road, and that is connectivity to the Rodecaster Pro 2 or potentially Rodecaster Duo, which I don't have yet, but I do have one coming. And that is connecting it over the USB connection to one of the Rodecaster devices. It was mentioned at the product launch that you would be able to connect to one of the Rodecaster devices over USB, enabling an additional input channel. I did try to connect it via the USB connection to both USB 1 and 2 on my Rodecaster Pro 2, and I could not get an input signal on either connection. And of course, if that functionality comes along, or if I just figure out how it works, I will include that in an upcoming video. All right, so that's my initial look at the PodMic USB. As I mentioned, I'll be doing some additional videos going a little more in depth and doing some comparisons, so don't forget to subscribe if you want to see those. What do you think of the PodMic USB? Let me know down in the comments. What do you think of the sound quality? Did you hear any difference in the sound quality with USB compared to XLR or compared to the original PodMic? Do you think it's a good value for $199 compared to what else is available on the market. Also, let me know in the comments if there are any specific tests or comparisons you would like to see with the PodMic USB, and I'll do my best to make it happen. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.